Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome to our November 2020 Q&A and hot seat for this month. I'm very excited to be here today. Bear with me a little bit. Today is going to be kind of a funny day. My son is actually home from school today, so he's sitting here in my office. Right now, he's watching a show. He's being really good, but I'm sure he's probably going to pop up and join us at some point, inevitably. So bear with me as we go through that. And then I also just want to make sure everybody can see and hear me before we go ahead and get started. Okay, perfect. So it looks like we're live. If you are watching us live and there are any tech issues, just feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm going to be kind of monitoring that on both ends here. Also, and let me pull this up, if you have questions. So we actually have a ton of questions for today. We should be able to get through all of them, but if you are watching live and you have questions, feel free to submit those at megkwheeler.com/BAT-questions. So again, megkwheeler.com/BAT-questions. And I will do my best to answer those if you are giving those to me live. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the comments as well for anyone who's watching us. And then, excuse me, if you want to sign up for Hot Seat, not this time, but in the future, and actually, sorry, let me back up a second. That link, this link below right here, megkwheeler.com/BAT-questions, is the link that you can always use to submit questions. So you can use that to submit questions for next month and future months, not just today. Also in the future, if you want to sign up for a hot seat, go to megkwheeler.com/BAT-hot seat. And that is where you can sign up for hot seat. And let me actually just pull up our question list in case anyone does decide to submit while I'm here live. So bear with me 1 minute. Now, today is a bit unusual because we, in theory, we were combining the Q&A and the hot seat. And we were doing that because of the Thanksgiving holiday, which is next week. But no one signed up for hot seat. We've got a ton of questions. A lot of questions came in, but nobody wanted to hop on for hot seat this month. So we're in theory doing a combined Q&A and hot seat, but we're not doing a hot seat because no one signed up for hot seat. So if anyone is here watching live and wants to hop on for a hot seat, let me know in the comments. I can send you the link. We can hop on and we can do that. Otherwise, I'm just going to work through these questions because like I said, we did get a ton of questions come in and I want to just make sure that we've got them. Okay, so I've got my questions up. So if anyone does submit, and actually I had said to submit questions. If you're watching live today, I had said to submit them using the link. I'm actually going to ask you to go ahead and just put those in the comments instead of using the link. That way I can just see them. I don't have to keep checking my sheet. If you want to submit questions for future Q&As, please use the link that I put up on the screen. And so bear with me 1 minute. We got a lot of tech stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to pop this up. So yeah, if you've got any questions, post them in the comments. Excuse me. Okay. I think that was all the housekeeping items I wanted to address, and I'm just checking over here on Facebook to make sure everything looks good, and it does. Okay, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and hop into the questions. Now, just as a reminder, the workshop this month was setting smashable financial goals. And it was all about, hold on, go to adjust the camera here a little bit. It was all about how we can set goals that we can actually achieve and how to go about that process as we're thinking about setting goals for the new year. So I think the majority, if not all of our questions today are dealing with goal setting and with that workshop. If you haven't had a chance to watch that workshop, please check it out. It's on your membership portal. It's also on our private YouTube channel, which you can always access by going to megkwheeler.com/monthly calls. That takes you directly to our private YouTube channel, which is where you can watch these lives, but also the replays. So again, it's in your membership portal, it's on the YouTube channel, and it's also in the Facebook group as well. So definitely check out that workshop if you haven't already. Other than that, I think that was it for administrative items. So I'm going to go ahead and pop up our first question here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So our first question, and I apologize, I always forget to write down who asked these. So I apologize, I don't remember who asked this question, but someone wrote in and said, this year was tough. Yes, it was. I'm nervous to set goals in 2021 because I feel like I'm just going to struggle again. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about this. I'm really glad that you said this, because I think, and I want to start this off by saying, we talk a lot about how this was a really tough year. We had the COVID-19 pandemic, which we still have. There's been a lot of racial injustice issues and civil unrest. I recognize that the year hasn't been horrible for everybody, but we do talk about this being a really tough year, because I think in general it has been, even if people can sort of say they've come through it, and kind of feel good about where they're at, I think it's just, there've been a lot of challenges for everybody this year. And so I think the first thing is really just recognizing that and acknowledging that, yeah, this has been a more challenging year than maybe some others. And in particular, because there have been a lot of challenges from a lot of different areas. So, you might have years where you say, this has been a tough year for me professionally, or it's been a tough year for me personally, or health-wise, or whatever. But this year, I feel like there's just been a lot coming from kind of all different angles. The economy is is struggling. Obviously health is a big concern for a lot of people. I think just isolation and the world changing has been tough for a lot of people. Politics, like there's just been so many different aspects this year. So I think the first thing is to acknowledge that this was and is a really challenging year. And so when we're thinking about 2021 and how to set goals, I think it can be, I think we can almost be a little gun shy, right? And I think this is what you're getting at when you said, I feel like I'm just going to struggle again, is that feeling of like, why am I going to even bother? Because whatever I write down isn't going to happen. And maybe that's because of the pandemic, maybe that's because of some, other stuff going on. But I think that's a common feeling that, and especially too, because I think, and at least this was the case in my social circles and the people I talked to, is I think there was for a better part of the year, I think there was this sense that 2021 would be better, right? You've seen all the memes that are like, can we just fast forward to, New Year's Eve and whatnot, basically talking about the fact that we just need to end 2020 and let's get 2021 started, right? But I think a lot of people who were saying those things and sharing those things were operating on this belief that by this point, we would be in a much better situation. And so that going into 2021, we wouldn't have all of the challenges that we've had this year. And I think as we're getting closer to 2021, we're, what are we, 41, 42, give or take a couple of days out from 2021. And we're still knee deep in the pandemic here in the US. We, just had the big election, which, depending on, where you stand might have been really good or really bad for you. But I think even for people who were very relieved at the result, I think there's still a lot of unrest. We have a president who's refusing to concede and a lot of challenges there. So, I think for a lot of folks, they expected by this, and I was one of them, expected by this point that we would be much further along. And 2021 really would be that relief in the distance. And I think we're now seeing that it's very likely we go into 2021 with number one, with maybe not much having changed that much, but also number two, the reality, which was always going to be the case, that it wasn't like a light switch. It wasn't like the minute 2020 ended and 2021 started that we'd flip a light switch and everything would be better, right? So as we're going into our goal setting, I want to maybe share a couple of thoughts with you. And again, the first is sort of what I started this with, which is just acknowledging that this has been a challenging year and acknowledging that it is hard to think about what 2021 is going to look like and what we're going to be able to accomplish in 2021. And I think it's also okay if you're not feeling overly optimistic about 2021. I mean, I don't want you to feel that way, but I think it's okay to sit with that feeling. I don't think you should be beating yourself up or feeling like you're giving up on your business or your dreams or whatever by not being as optimistic as maybe you would have been, in the past. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is to really understand the purpose of goals. So when we talk about goals, when we talk about setting goals, and I talk about this a lot in the workshop, Goals are really kind of a point in our journey. So when we think about, my son is like babbling right now in another language that I don't understand. So hopefully you can't hear that. When we think about kind of the bigger dreams for our business or the bigger vision for our business and what we want to get out of that. So for example, for me, freedom and flexibility are two really important components of my business. Flexibility in the sense that I don't want to be tied to my desk. I don't want to be tied to my calendar. I don't want to feel like I'm always stuck doing stuff. I want to have flexibility to go live if I want, or to do this or to that. I want to be able to have that kind of flexibility in my schedule. And then the second, freedom for me, is very much about financial freedom. Building something that is making me money, that doesn't rely on me having to show up every moment to make money, that it's got a process behind it. 1 second. What's up, buddy? Not right now. Remember, mommy said she's on a call. Okay. If you sit on my lap, then you have to turn this down. So it's up to you. Do you want to go draw? No. Okay. You can come sit on my lap for a few minutes, but you're going to be on mommy's call then. Okay. All right, so we're gonna have a little visitor. I had a feeling this would happen, although earlier than I expected. So shh, you have to be quiet because mommy's on a call. Remember?
The golf club.
Mommy's on a call.
The golf club.
Do you want to go draw?
No.
Okay, mommy's on a call, so you need to be quiet, okay? So that, if you think about those aspects of my vision for my business, then when I go to set my goals, I'm going to set my goals as sort of points along the journey to get there, right? So let's take flexibility, for example. If my goal is to if my vision is to ultimately have complete flexibility in my business, where I'm not tied to calendar, and I can wake up every day and be really flexible in what I do for my business, then perhaps a goal is going to be, perhaps a goal is going to be phasing out all of my one-on-one client work, because that one-on-one client work requires me to show up at a certain time and make appointments and all of that. So that goal of, phasing out client work might look something like, well, this year I'm going to double my course sales. Shh, Jack, mommy's on a call. Here, all right, go sit in your chair and I'll turn it louder. Okay. Go sit in your chair, please. So that this year, maybe that goal is doubling my course sales and having my one-on-one clients. And then maybe the next year, my goal is doubling my course sales again and having again, or something like that, right? Well, those goals aren't the make it or break it, the end all be all. Like if I don't hit that goal, then I can't have flexibility in my business. That's not how that works. Those goals are just points along the journey of getting from where I'm at to where I want to be, which is complete flexibility in my business. Excuse me. So much like I always talk about sort of your budget as a roadmap, right? Your budget is a roadmap to get to those goals, in a roadmap in the sense that it shows you a way to accomplish those goals. It doesn't show you the only way. There's usually multiple ways, but it shows you a way to accomplish those goals, right? Well, much like a budget, i.e. your roadmap, isn't set in stone. It's just one way to get there. Your goals are just some of the points on that journey. So, let's take the example of where I said my goal was going to be to double my course sales so that I could have my one-on-one clients. Well, that may be my goal for 2021, let's just say, right? But as I move into 2021, I may end up shifting things. I may decide, hey, I actually want to take on a little bit more, or maybe I don't want to cut as much of my one-on-one client work because I actually want to build up more of a financial buffer, something like that, whatever it may be. And it's perfectly okay to make those decisions. It could be that 2021 ends up being hard, and we're still, maybe my son's school gets canceled for a few months and all of a sudden that reduces my ability to work as much in my business. So, those goals are kind of those points, but if we don't hit them, it doesn't mean we failed. It doesn't mean that we've done something wrong. All it means is that we've just reached a different point on that journey. Like I wish I had my whiteboard so I could draw. Like basically like picture, hold on, let me start this way. So like it's the mirror, right? Like this is where you are, this is where you want to be, right? So here we go. There are all these points in your journey, right? And so you're basically, your goals are the ones you're choosing to aspire to sort of set the point on the map and say, that's where I'm going to try to go in this next leg of my journey. And if you don't get there, that's okay. As long as you're moving forward on your journey, moving in the right direction, you're on the right path. So when you're thinking about setting goals for 2021, I want you to think about it in that way. That whatever markers you put as your goals for 2021 are not the end all be all. And honestly, very likely will change because there is a lot that's unknown about 2021. So if you go into it with sort of that idea, and actually to even take a step back, yes, I do want you to choose goals for the year, but I also want you to think about that broader vision for your business. And I never want to say like, people are always like, do a 5-year plan or whatever. I don't love to put a specific time on it. Like I don't sit here and say in 5 years, I want to be here, because so much can and will change in 5 years that feels very arbitrary to sort of pick that point, right? So for me, it's more about here is what I want to achieve, complete flexibility with my schedule. And then here's my roadmap. I really hope you can't hear him. Here's my roadmap for how to get there. So hopefully that helps just kind of start to reframe your mindset around this. But at the end of the day, know that anytime we're in a period of uncertainty, whether it's global uncertainty like we are now, or it's just individual personal uncertainty, it can be hard to choose these goals. But when you think about these goals as really just points along the journey of reaching that bigger vision, I think it becomes a lot easier to choose them, and also a lot less pressure to hit them specifically, because not hitting them doesn't mean you failed. It just means that you're at a different point on the journey than you thought you would be. So hopefully that helps and makes sense. Okay, let's get our next question up here. Okay, I get really overwhelmed trying to come up with the steps to accomplish a goal. I'm not a process person, so I'm not sure where to start. Yeah, this is a great question. So for anyone who didn't see the workshop, or just as a refresher, we talk in the workshop a bit about, in fact, let me see if I can pull some of this up. We talk in the workshop about how ultimately it's not about the goal, it's about the process. And what I mean by that is if you're just constantly fixated on hitting the goal, then you're going to do whatever you need to do to hit the goal, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But what you're not doing is building processes and systems that help make hitting subsequent goals easier. So the example I give in the workshop, and I'm happy to give other examples as well, is if you woke up one day and said, I want to run a marathon. Okay, so you wake up and you say, I want to run a marathon. So then you're going to put this plan into place. You're going to run so many miles every day. You're going to train. You're going to eat, whatever. And then you're going to run that marathon. You've hit that goal. Cool, right? But let's say you did all that in 3 months. You really pushed your body to do it. You were really aggressive with your training plan, and you run this marathon. You've accomplished your goal, but then you're so burnt out. You've injured your body. Which is what happens to those of us who are older and we try to run a marathon, and you find that you really kind of did some damage to yourself, right? So yeah, you ran the marathon, but now becoming kind of a lifelong runner is actually really hard because you've done that damage to yourself. And even if you haven't done that damage to yourself, you haven't put a consistent plan into place that you can keep up on a regular basis. Another example would be, if you wanted to lose weight and you said, okay, I want to lose, 20 pounds in 6 months or whatever. And you fast and you only drink water and you do these crazy dieting things. Well, yeah, you'll probably lose the 20 pounds. So you've technically accomplished the goal, but you haven't done anything to put yourself on a long-term path to success. Because as soon as you hit that goal, you're going to be like, okay, well, what's next? And more than likely, you'll fall back into your old habits because you can't sustain the aggressive dieting that you were doing to hit that goal. It's the same thing in our businesses. If you set a goal of I want to make $10,000 this month, but you don't really have any systems or anything in place, you're just like, I got to make $10,000. You're going to be out there hustling, trying to get people in, and maybe you hit the goal. Maybe you get enough people in. But on day one of the next month, you're going to be doing the same thing over again because you didn't put any systems or processes in place to help build up that business and help and to bring people in on a consistent basis. So when we talk about creating a process to reach our goals, I care a lot less about hitting the goal than I do that you set up a good process. I wanted to just see real fast. Let me remind myself. Oh yeah, I want to share. Let me share my screen real fast. I want to just show y'all. I mean, I could read this to you, but I also think it's just sometimes nice to see things. This quote. So this is from the workshop, but I think this quote does a really good job of kind of explaining what we're talking about here. Did I do this right? Yes. So this quote by James Clear, who is the author of Atomic Habits, he says the purpose, let me get rid of this real fast. He says the purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of having systems is to keep playing the game. So again, it's that question of, do I want to just run the marathon or do I want to be a lifelong runner? And so really focusing on those systems and processes is super important. Okay, so now let's get back to the questions. Let me pull the question back up here. So the question was, well, how the heck do I do this? So in the workshop, I talked about how you basically want to start from the end. So you want to kind of set your goal and whatever that may be. Let's just say it's to hit $100,000 in revenues for the year. And then, sorry, my hair is getting in my way. And then basically work your way back and break it down. And I don't know, let me just see real fast. Ooh, did I save it? Hold on. Yes, I think I did. So I did a whiteboard exercise in the workshop where I basically showed, I don't know why this isn't working, but I basically showed y'all like how I would do this myself. So I want to see, I don't know if I actually saved it though. So let me see if I did real fast because I think it'll be helpful if I can walk you through this. Because we did it kind of high level in the workshop. So let me see if I can walk you through it if I saved it. I did. Perfect. Okay. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. This is just a whiteboarding tool that I use. This isn't something that you need to get to for the purpose of this. I just did it so I could be able to walk through this exercise. So, and I'll literally do this on a piece of paper. I'll do this on my physical whiteboard. This is literally the process I do anytime. So you've got the goal. And now you want to create that roadmap for how you get there, right? So $100,000 in revenues by the end of 2020, here's our goal right here, right? The first thing I do is I start to break it down by time, by timing. So by quarters, by months, by weeks, okay? So the first thing I did was I made 4 boxes with my 4 quarters. And I said, okay, how much do I want to make each quarter? Now, in this example, I made them even 25K each quarter. Your business may be different. For me personally, I live by the beach. I don't like to work as much in the summer. So for me, if I were really doing this for my business, I would actually probably reduce my Q3 amount and then increase my other 3. But for ease, we're going to keep them all the same, right? So that's the very first thing I do. Now, I promise I'm getting to the question of like, how do you actually figure out the steps? We're not there yet. This is kind of the high level stuff. So the next thing I do within each quarter is I break it down even more. So I break it down into months and I say, okay, excuse me, what do I think I'm going to do per month? Now, a lot of this is driven by when by what I sell and when I promote it and how I do that. In my business, and if you actually just saw my email from yesterday, I talked about how from this moment on, I'm not live launching anything ever again. All of my products will always be available. It's part of my commitment to running a more equitable business. So for me, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, well, I'm probably going to do the same amount, or I'm going to set a goal of the same amount of revenues per month. But in your case, if you live launch or if you have an event or whatever it may be, you may change some of those months. If you take a month off, you may decrease in that month. So that's the next step. Then what I do, and this is where we get to the plan piece of this. And let me see. Hold on. That is not what I want. Well, laser pointer will be helpful, but I also want, hold on. There we go. I was like, where is my, oh, that was aggressive. That was too much. This is reset. Okay. I don't know why it's like, no, it just hates. Oh, there we go. I was like, I want to do it. I want y'all to be able to like see this a little bit more. It just doesn't like me. Okay. So here's our kind of Q1, right? So in our January. So then what I do is I break down each month. And so I look at, okay, if I want to make $8,000 in revenues in January, how can I do that? So in this case, in the example I gave in the workshop, I said, well, we're going to split it evenly between my course and my membership. And I gave very simple numbers for this. So I said, let's assume that the course is $1,000 course. So then let's break this down further. So that means $4,000 is selling 4 courses. And then I said, okay, let's assume in a few minutes, but it's in the kitchen. Do you want to go grab it and come right back? Okay. So then I said, okay, let's assume that my conversion rate is 10%, meaning that for every 10 people that come through my door, get on my email list, whatever it may be, I sell to one of them. So in order to get 4 courses sold, that's 40 people, right? And so then I break it down even further and I say, okay, how am I going to go about getting those 40 people into my world? And in this case, I said, I'm going to get 30 from Facebook ads, 5 from Instagram, 5 from my Facebook group. Now, again, you're going to tailor this to your business. But that's how I break each of those steps down. And then I would have done the same exercise for the membership as well. Now, the next piece of this, which we didn't really get into in the workshop, is taking this information. Okay, I've got to get 30 people through Facebook ads, 5 people through Instagram, 5 people through my Facebook group, so that I get 40 people total, so that I sell 4 courses, so that I bring in $4,000, right? The next step in creating this roadmap is to break this down and say, what do I have to do to get those 30 people from the Facebook ads? So this is where having a good task management software is really helpful. I use ClickUp personally. You can use something like Monday or Asana or Trello, like whatever works for you. But this is where I would literally sit down and say, okay, what do we need to do? We probably need to design the ads. We need to write the copy. We need to schedule the ads. We need to choose the audience. We need to run them. We need to evaluate them. Like I literally write down every single step required to get those 30 people from the Facebook ads. Where's my laser pointer here? There we go, right? See, look, isn't that fun? Facebook ads. So that it's already kind of built into my business so that I make sure that every single one of those steps happens. Hold on. Jack, honey, bring your toast back. It makes me nervous when he's gone for any period of time and it's very, very quiet. Jack, come back, my love. So that's what I'll do. And I'll do the same thing for Instagram. Okay, how do I get those 5 people from Instagram? And then I'll map out exactly what steps we need to take to get Instagram. Same thing for the Facebook group. And then I'll do that for the membership. And then I'll go into February and go into March and do that same process. And then I'll continue it on through the rest of the quarters. Good job. Can you close the door, please? Thank you. So that's the process that you go through. And I just want to bring this question back up here. So like, where do you start? That's the process that I go through. And that's why I like to start at the end and kind of work my way back and then literally go, okay, and how do I do that? And how do I do that? And how do I do it? Like every time. So it's like here, I want to make where's my laser pointer? I want to make $8,000 in January. How do I do that? I'm going to sell $4,000 in courses and $4,000 in memberships. Well, how do I sell $4,000 in courses? I sell 4 courses. Well, how do I sell 4 courses? I get 40 people. Well, how do I get 40 people? And so you literally keep walking it back and walking it back and walking it back and walking it back. And I find it's a lot easier for folks, even folks who are not process-oriented people, to come up with those steps when you really break it down into the little pieces. Also, make sure you're involving your team as part of this process as well. I think that's a really critical, if you have a team, that's a really critical component too, right? Because many times they're going to be the ones doing these steps. And so you want to make sure that kind of everything is captured. We use SOPs in my business, standard operating procedures. They're literally Google Docs where we map out kind of every process we do. So when we sit down to put tasks into ClickUp or we sit down to map out the year, we're linking to the relevant SOP because we already have it created. So we don't need to sit down and write out every single step. We've already got it. But that's how you really go about this process. But at the end of the day, if you're feeling overwhelmed, break it down. Start small. Like you don't need to, nope, I don't want laser pointer. I want this. You don't need to do every single month, every single quarter right off the bat. You can honestly start very, very small and just say, let me break it into quarters, and then let me break it into months, and let me just focus on Q1 for right now, and like just start doing Q1. And then once you get that under your belt, then you can move to Q2. So don't let the whole picture overwhelm you. Start small and just keep breaking it down. Hopefully that helps answer your question. All right, let's bring up our next question. Tea break, sorry. How did you decide your growth goals? It feels like I'm just choosing random numbers. Great question. Sometimes it is choosing random numbers. So one of the things I said in the workshop is to always make sure that your goals are strategic, that they have a purpose. I want to see exactly what I just said, or exactly what I said. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. And that's true, but there's also not one right answer. And so when you think about what goal, and you asked growth goals, so I don't know if you're talking about financial growth or if you're talking about like email lists and things like that. But to be honest, the answer is going to be the same either way. What I do is I go back to that bigger vision. And then I work it back, right? So again, if my bigger vision is I want to get to a point where I have no meetings on my calendar and I have no sort of time constraints, then for me, a goal is going to be to build up my digital product side of my business and really phase out my one-on-one work. And so when I'm setting my goals, I mean, look, when I'm setting those goals for 2021, I could say that I want to double my digital product, like let's say doubling my digital products business. Or let me put it into real numbers. Let's say I make $100,000 in revenues right now from one-on-one work, right? And that's what I'm trying to replace, $100,000. So in 2021, I could say I want to do $100,000 in digital products and zero in one-on-one work. Or I could say I want to do 50,000 of each. Or I could say I want to do 75 of one-on-one and 25 of digital products, recognizing that it may take me a bit to scale up my digital products side of my business. All of those are fine. Like all of those make sense, right? All of those are goals that align with my bigger vision. Now, some of them may be more realistic than others. Maybe going from 0% digital products to 100% of my revenue from digital products in 1 year, maybe that's a little aggressive. Doesn't mean it's impossible. I could do it. But maybe that's a little more aggressive. Maybe the 75% or 75 grand from client work and 25 grand from digital products, maybe that's not aggressive enough. Maybe I could do more in 1 whole year, right? But they're all perfectly fine because they all align with my bigger vision. So when you're thinking about how to choose your goals, yeah, in a sense, they're kind of random. But as long as they align with your bigger vision, as long as they're points on the journey that you're going on, that you're trying to be on, not some other random journey, then they make sense. If I'll give you a great example. This past year, coming into 2020, I had decided that I was going to really simplify things in my business. And I was going to really focus on, and I've talked about this before, but really focus on one offer, one product, kind of one ICA, one ideal client, one sort of form of consistent content every week, and then one place where I sell, where I engage with people. And so to that last one, the place where I sell and engage with people, I decided it was going to be my Facebook group. I decided I wasn't going to put a lot of time in Instagram because for me, my goal, my sort of bigger goal to lead into my vision for 2020 was to increase my revenues and / my profits. And for me, Instagram at the time wasn't a place where I was really seeing a lot of traction in selling. Doesn't mean it can't be. It just wasn't for me at the time. I wasn't putting the effort in, so I wasn't getting much out of it. But I was doing pretty well in my Facebook group. So I opted at the beginning of 2020 when I set my goals to really focus on my Facebook group, right? Now, let's just say, so again, my bigger vision there is to grow the revenues in my business, right? And one of my goals to get to that bigger vision was, I forget what my number was, but was to let's just say to, add 1,000 people to my Facebook group. Okay, making up things now, but that would have been an appropriate goal, growth goal, to in line with my vision. But let's say I also set a goal and said, I want my Instagram to, I want to grow my Instagram engagement rate, to 10%. Well, that's not really in line with my bigger vision, right? My bigger vision was to grow the revenues and the profits of my business so that I could be more financially free, right? More financially comfortable. Well, growing the engagement rate on my Instagram account doesn't really align with that. Now, it might if you use Instagram as your primary selling channel and you see the number of sales you get directly tied to your engagement increasing. But that's not the case for me. So for me, that wouldn't have been a goal that was in line with my bigger vision. So when we think about choosing, goals and choosing, isn't it just choosing random numbers? Yeah, it is to some extent. But again, as long as they align with your vision and as long as they are points on the path to where you're trying to go, they make sense. So hopefully that helps answer that question. All right, let's get to our next question. Oh boy, we still got 4 more. We're running out of time. Okay. I'm still a little confused about how to focus on process versus the final goal. Can you please explain this more? Okay, so I may have answered this question with the exercise I just did, but let's actually talk about some examples, because I personally think examples are the easiest way to understand something. So one example might be, let's take email lists. Let's say your email list goal is to get 1,000 people on your email list over, 6 months. So one thing you might do during the course of that 6 months is you might, every once in a while, you might like blitz social, like put a ton of posts on social, and maybe that gets you in some people, right? Or let's say you might also, like, every once in a while, you might run a Facebook ad and that'll get you some people in. Okay, so by the end of the 6 months, you've hit your 1,000 people goal. Great, right? But what you didn't do was you didn't put in a process to consistently grow your email list. So that's sort of, I don't want to call it bad, but that's sort of like the harder way to do it, because you're not putting a process in place, right? You hit your 1,000-person goal, but the minute you hit it, now you're going to sit there and be like, okay, well, so now what? Because nothing else is going to happen once you've hit that goal until you do something else. On the flip side, if you said, okay, my goal is to add 1,000 people to my email list, and instead you did, let's say, a couple of things. Let's say number one, you put a Facebook ad strategy in place. So you came up with a graphic, you came up with copy, and you came up with a call to action, a freebie that would get people on your email list. And you set that up and you consistently ran that for the 6 months. And you also consistently evaluated it for the 6 months so that you were consistently improving it and tweaking it and making it better, right? So that even when that 6 months ended and you hit your 1,000-person goal, that ad could continue to run and continue to grow and continue to bring you in more people. Let's just say that you also decided during that time that you were going to start doing weekly blog posts. And then at the end of every blog post, you are going to put a call to action to your freebie to join your email list. So now by doing that, you're putting a process in place. Every single week, I do this blog post, and every single week, my call to action is this freebie to join my email list. So again, now at the end of the 6 months, yeah, you've hit your 1,000-person goal, but you also now have a system in place, the weekly content, or weekly blog posts with the call to action that will continue on and will continue to help you grow. So it's finding things like that. So for me, I'll give you a great example. Going into 2021, I have a few processes that I'm really focused on that are tied to my goals. So process number one, excuse me, is actually growing my email list, what I just talked about. And so again, for us, it's not about, hey, like every once in a while, let's just put a post out and we'll get some people. It's about we're focusing on Facebook ads. We're actually focusing on Pinterest and having a consistent process there. And we're also focusing on the content that I do every single week. I go live every single week, and making the call to action there be generally speaking, be going to grab a freebie to get on the email list. Another process that we're really focused on for 2021 that's tied to a big goal is actually with the membership and is getting people in there. So, and again, this is part of kind of that email list process because we're going to get people on the email list first before they go to the membership. But we're building out the process there that includes a freebie, it includes some emails, and include some other opportunities so that that process, once it's created, we're going to keep tweaking it. We're going to keep evaluating it, making it the best it can be. But once it's created, it's going to keep running and it's going to keep bringing people in and feeding people in so that we're not constantly kind of scrambling to hit the goal. We're going to hit the goal because the process is constantly working. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's go to our next one. Oh, I like this question. I know you've talked about how profit is more important than revenue. So should I be choosing a profit goal and ignoring a revenue goal? It's a great question. So look, the thing I've said before, and this is actually a quote, and I'm completely blanking on who said this quote. So bear with me on that. But the quote is that revenues are vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow is reality. Now, we're not talking about cash flow today. I bring up that quote when I want to stress how important cash flow is. But the reason I bring up that quote is because, so revenue, and let's get clear on our terminology. Revenues are sales coming in, right? Before expenses, before anything. Profits are revenues minus expenses. So your sales coming in minus everything you have to pay for. That gets you your profits. Your profits basically are the money the business has actually made that can either be invested back into the business, or it can be saved, or it can be distributed to you as profits since you're the owner. So the question of, okay, so do we even focus on revenues at all? Look, here's why I bash revenues, because revenues are vanity. Revenues are the kind of thing you'll see people say, well, I'm a 7-figure business owner, or I just hit 6 figures. They're always talking about revenues. And frankly, it doesn't tell us anything about their business, because you could have a business in which you have $1 million in revenues, but if you spend $999,000 to get that $1 million, you only have made $1,000 of profit. You can also have a business where you have $1 million in revenues, but you spend $1,000 to get the $1 million. And so then you actually have $999,000 of profits. Both are $1 million businesses in the sense of how we all talk about them, but very different businesses. And I certainly know which one I'd rather have, right? The one with $999,000 of profits. So that's why I don't love talking about revenues. That said, I think that it is good to have a revenue goal, and here's why. Because when you sit down, and this is the next step after you do your goals, but when you sit down and you actually map out your budget's going to have a few key pieces to it. It's going to have revenues, it's going to have expenses, it's going to have what you pay yourself. It's probably going to have some, what money you're going to save in your business. And it's going to have profits, right? If you just set a profit goal, I think it becomes a lot harder, or I should say a lot wishy-washier, to figure out how to get to that profit goal. Because if I set a profit goal of $100,000, I can achieve that through a business that has $200,000 in revenues and $100,000 in expenses. I can achieve that through a business that has $1 million in revenues and $900,000 in expenses. Very different businesses, very different budgets, very different roadmaps, very different plans. So yeah, I think it is beneficial to have that revenue goal. But I think you shouldn't care as much about the revenue goal as you care about the profit goal. So if I say that my goal is to have $100,000 in profits, and I'm going to do that by having $200,000 in revenues and $100,000 in expenses, and then 6 months into my business, I'm on track to hit my $100,000 in profits, but I've only made but I'm only on track to make $150,000 in revenues, but I've also been able to cut my expenses in half. I'm not beating myself up about that. I'm pretty happy that I'm still going to make my number. Now, that said, and actually that was the perfect example for what I wanted for my cautionary tale. That said, if I set a revenue goal of $200,000 and I only hit $150,000, even if I still hit my profit goal, I want to understand why I didn't hit my revenue goal. Because remember, revenues are sales you actually get, right? So at the end of the day, you can be the most frugal business owner, which can lead you to have profits that you want. But if you can't increase your revenues over time, if you can't increase the number of sales you bring in, if you can't increase the total dollars that are coming into your business, then your business is going to basically hit a ceiling. And so this is why it's important to have that revenue goal too. Yes, the profit goal I think is more important and rules, but ultimately, you want to make sure that your business is actually growing. And one of the ways that we see it grow are through those revenues. So my recommendation would be have both, but stress about that, not stress, but focus on the profit one a little bit more than the revenue one. Okay, 2 more questions. We're going to get through these. We have 15 minutes. I have no clue where to start to set a goal. I know I want to make more money, but I don't know how to choose a number that's reasonable, but also not playing small. Yeah, this is a great question. So, and I think this is very normal for a lot of us. It's like, how the heck do we pick that number, right? You know, look, when I sit down to set my financial goals every year, because I feel like this is where we tend to play small the most, less so with the email list goals or whatever. I look at a few things. Number one, I look at how much money I want to make that year as a minimum. Number two, I look at where my business, what my business did this year. Not to limit myself, but to give myself, you know, I think I said this in the workshop. If you did $25,000 this year in let's just say in revenues, then the chance that you're going to do $1 million next year, not as likely. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but not as likely, right? As maybe going from 25 to 100,000. So it's important to know kind of where you're starting. I also factor in my vision, that bigger vision. And so I think not just about what I want to make this year, but what I want to make in future years and how I'm going to get there. And that is the component that tends to help me the most to make sure I'm not playing small. So let me give you an example. If I say I want to have $1 million business in 3 years, and let's just say for argument's sake, I'm starting at 0. So our numbers are easy. So in 3 years, I want to have $1 million business. Well, if I wasn't thinking about the fact that I wanted to have $1 million business, and again, I'm talking about revenues for the sake of ease, then I might say, well, I can probably, I don't know, bring in 50 grand this year. But once I factor in and I say, okay, hold on though, my goal is to hit $1 million in 3 years. So if I'm only shooting for 50 grand this year, that's a pretty, then I gotta come up with 950 grand, or I gotta make the jump, basically 950 grand over 2 years now. So instead, hey, maybe this first year I'm going to shoot for 150. And then maybe I'm going to shoot for 450 and then $1 million, or whatever it may be, right? So understanding kind of that long-term goal, I think, can also give you a sense for what you need to hit in the interim years so that you can get there. And that's the piece that tends to push people upwards a bit. When you look at the prior year's numbers, that tends to keep you constrained. When you look at where you want to go, that tends to pull you up. But at the end of the day, as we talked about before, there's no right answer. So my recommendation is to set what I call hairy, scary goals. Goals that feel possible, but scary, really scary. And usually and when I say possible, it's possible because you've sat down and you've figured out what it's going to take to get there, and what it's going to take to get there is doable. So for example, if you said, we had that example on the whiteboard where we said we have to get 40 people through to sell the courses, right? And 30 of those are going to come from Facebook ads. Well, let's just assume that to get 30 people, I'm totally making this up and this number's wrong, but let's just assume to get 30 people, you have to spend $500, right? Well, if you don't have if you're not budgeting or are not able to budget $500 to get those 30 people every single month, then maybe that goal is not realistic for you. So that's why it's so important to break down those goals and figure out exactly what you need to do to get there, because that's also a part of that process is figuring out if it's realistic and it's something you can do. And so when we set those hairy, scary goals, we know they're realistic because we've broken down the process and we've said, yeah, this feels really scary. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of effort, whatever, but it's doable. I've looked at it and I have a plan for doing it. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, last question. I like this. We kind of talked about this at the beginning, but I think this is actually a good question to wrap up on. I feel like we have no idea what's going to happen in 2021. How do I set goals and create a roadmap that makes sense given who knows what will happen? Yeah, I mean, look, going back to what I said at the beginning, goals are not the end all be all. They are the point in the journey that you're kind of putting your eye on and saying, that's where I'm heading, so that it keeps you moving in the right direction. So when you think about 2021, and we've got a lot of unknowns, I would focus. I still want you to make very concrete goals. I still want you to put specific numbers on them. But I would focus less on the specific numbers and more on the processes and more on, and more on why those are your goals. So what do I mean by that? For example, like one of my goals in my business, candidly, is to have more consistent income coming in. My income's kind of been all over the place. And so for me, having more consistent income coming in is important. Now, I'm still going to set a kind of big financial goal for revenues and profits. I'm still going to set a number. But what I'm really going to be laser focused on every single month is less that number and more just, am I continuing to increase my revenues every month and my profits? And am I getting more consistent revenue coming in? So I would almost encourage you to focus on things like that number one, are not only really important for your business. I mean, go back to the idea of processes, right? But also, I think are going to be important in the context of a year or a couple of years where so much is up in the air. There's been, there's so many unknowns. There's so much inconsistency. And so I think if you can focus on setting goals that really give your business a good foundation, that's the businesses that did the best through this year, that the businesses that struggled the least were the ones that had really good processes and systems in place, so that even in the face of uncertainty, the business was still cranking, right? And in many cases, maybe the process did have to be tweaked, depending on the nature of the business. But it's so much easier to tweak a process that's already in place than it is to put a process into place from scratch. So that's really what I would encourage you to think about is, you're going to pick your financial goals. You're going to create a roadmap to get there. And what ends up happening is probably going to be very different. I don't even mean that in a bad way. It could be very different in a good way. You're probably still going to hit your goals, but maybe you hit them in a different way. So you're going to do all that, and that's important. But I would really focus on, when you set those goals, kind of having that underlying purpose. So again, my big financial goal, well, the underlying purpose is really to have consistent revenues coming in. And so in every decision I make in my business next year, it's going to be less about how do I hit the number and more about how do I put processes in place to achieve kind of that underlying purpose to have consistent revenue. So hopefully that makes sense. But at the end of the day, it's hard. It's hard in a good year. It's going to be harder this year. So my sort of parting words on that are just remembering that goals are a point in the journey. They help keep you going in the right direction. But they are not the end all be all. Cool? All right, friends, I think that is all we've got, which is good because we're coming up just about on the hour here. I don't think I see any questions from folks watching live. But if I missed your question, don't forget you can always submit your questions by going to megkwheeler.com/BAT-questions. So our next month is also a little funky. No, actually, next month might be okay because of the holidays. I'm trying to remember. I think it was October, November that was funky. So next week is obviously Thanksgiving. We don't have anything for Thanksgiving. The next week is the first week of December, but and so we're going to have our workshop on December 2nd. So Wednesday, December 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern is our workshop topic, TBD, topics coming. Wednesday, December 9th is our Q&A at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then Wednesday, December 16th is our hot seat at 1 p.m. Eastern. So it's the first 3 Wednesdays in December. Every single one is 1 p.m. Eastern. I just want to double check that. But yes, every single one is 1 p.m. Eastern. And then nothing on the 23rd of December. So basically, because December is kind of a funkier, longer month, the last 2 weeks of December, we're not going to have anything for the membership. We're not going to have anything on the 23rd or the 30th. That's downtime, it's holiday time, that's spend with your family time, that's catch up time, whatever it may be for you. So this, what did I say? The 2nd, the 9th, the 16th in December are going to be our workshop, our Q&A, and our hot seat. And again, put your questions when you've got questions, megkwheeler.com/BAT-questions. And then you can always sign up for a hot seat, megkwheeler.com/BAT-hot seat. And lastly, you can always watch these or any replays by going to the member portal, but also by going to megkwheeler.com/monthly calls. So, all right, friends, I'm going to leave it there. I hope everybody has a great day. I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you all in December. Bye.